Granville T. Woods was born into a world that had already decided his limitations. It was 1856, and the shadow of slavery still lingered in Ohio, though he was born free. For most Americans, the laws said he could exist, move, breathe, but the invisible rules whispered that he could never create, never own, never invent. Yet from the very beginning, Woods seemed wired differently. While other boys played in the dirt, he tore apart clocks, watches, and household gadgets to see how they ticked. Every gear, every spring, every spark whispered a secret to him. The world could be controlled, managed, improved, but only if you dared to understand its language. By the time he was a teenager, Woods was already walking along railways, watching the massive iron engines puff smoke into the Ohio sky. He studied the patterns of signals, the way trains stopped and started, how communication determined life or death on steel tracks. Where white engineers saw only machines, he saw a conversation, a system of electricity, switches, and motion that could be perfected. And in that vision, he saw his path to create, to invent, to make the invisible forces of progress obey the hands of a black man. The problem was simple and brutal. Nobody in 19th century America would let a black man patent the future. They didn't need laws to justify theft. The culture itself enforced it. Banks refused him credit. Companies refused to partner. Investors turned away, claiming risk, though the real risk they feared was his skin. Every spark of genius he created was weighed against a world designed to erase it. And yet, Woods persisted. He filed patents in his own name, each application a defiance, a message scrawled into the bureaucracy that I exist, I build, I will be recognized, whether you like it or not. His first major success came quietly, almost invisibly. A device for electrical communication along railways, essentially a telegraph system for moving trains, could save lives by preventing collisions. For a white engineer, it might have been a patent and a payday. For Woods, it was a lifeline to visibility, a test of whether American institutions could acknowledge black brilliance. They did not. The device was adopted by railroads, used by thousands of workers, praised in technical circles, but often attributed to anonymous inventors or white middlemen. Each success came with a subtle sting, recognition withheld, applause given to others, the system rewriting history in real time. Woods did not retreat. He moved from city to city, from Cincinnati to New York, constantly building, tinkering, refining. Each patent, each invention, each experiment was a slap at a nation that had tried to tell him from birth that his mind was worth less than his neighbor's. He improved telegraphy, created an automatic brake, developed a multiplex telegraph, allowing multiple messages over a single wire. Innovations so crucial that trains became safer and communication faster, and still the newspapers hardly noticed. When his inventions were used, the credits went elsewhere. It wasn't negligence. It was deliberate. Every article that failed to mention his name was a reminder of a society committed to maintaining invisible hierarchies. In workshops dimly lit by oil lamps, Woods poured hours into sketches and blueprints. Sparks flew from his makeshift circuits, illuminating a man who refused to be erased. His hands, blackened by soot and work, moved with precision, born of obsession. He spoke rarely, but each creation spoke volumes. He belonged in the story of progress, and no law, no prejudice, no corporate greed could silence him completely. Yet the battles were constant. White inventors would attempt to claim his ideas. Lawsuits threatened to drain him financially. Every victory required vigilance, and the world outside never stopped testing him. Despite all obstacles, Woods understood the stakes. His work was not just personal. Every signal he improved, every machine he perfected, could save lives, prevent disaster, and open the door for black ingenuity. He built not just inventions, but a blueprint for resilience in a society determined to deny it. The telegraphs, the brakes, the electrical switches, they were more than metal and wire. They were proof, screaming in sparks and circuits, that intelligence does not recognize color even if society does. By the end of this period, Woods had become a man defined not by wealth or comfort, but by the relentless drive to create. Each patent, each small acknowledgement, was a victory snatched from a system bent on obscurity. The world outside remained skeptical, prejudiced, and often cruel. But within his mind, circuits and signals danced perfectly. Granville T. Woods had begun to wire the future, and while the nation refused to fully see him, every train whistle, every telegraph tick carried a part of his genius forward. By the 1880s, Granville T. Woods had already carved a path that few dared to tread. Every invention he filed, every patent he submitted, was a direct challenge to a society built on deliberate exclusion. His telegraph system for trains had proven itself, yet recognition remained elusive. Newspapers ignored his accomplishments. Technical journals mentioned the innovations without attaching a name. It was as if the world had an unspoken rule. Black brilliance must be utilized, celebrated in output, but never in person. And then Thomas Edison entered the picture. Edison, the man whose name would dominate the history of invention, saw Woods not as a peer, but as a threat. When Woods filed a patent for an improved multiplex telegraph system, Edison and his associates immediately attempted to claim it as their own. Lawsuits followed, and the courtroom became another battlefield. Woods sat in the shadow of America's most famous inventor, a black man fighting a white legend for acknowledgement, for a simple truth. This invention is mine. The system, however, was biased. Judges were human, juries were human, and human beings had been taught to value certain faces, certain voices, certain names above others. Woods won the lawsuits, time and time again. Each victory, however, was Pyrrhic. The media barely reported it. When his inventions were implemented, credit was often assigned to others. Corporations rebranded his designs under white executives' names. Investors who might have funded a black inventor now claimed ignorance, calling him unproven or high risk. The very institutions that claimed to protect innovation actively worked to obscure his contributions. The brilliance of Granville T. Woods was being absorbed, repackaged, and sold as something else, something palatable to a white America unwilling to acknowledge that a black man could shape the future. Yet Woods continued. He was relentless, studying, tinkering, and patenting new devices, refusing to bow to intimidation or erasure. He perfected the steam boiler, created an automatic air brake for trains, and improved the telephone systems. Each patent represented not just innovation, but defiance. Every spark in his workshop, every hum of machinery he enhanced, became a statement. Genius cannot be buried, no matter how systemic the opposition. And still, he worked in quiet anonymity, his name appearing sporadically on paper while the world at large remained oblivious. The battles were not only legal, but psychological. Woods faced constant attempts to delegitimize him. White inventors would claim their designs were original, mimicking his work, producing cheaper versions, and selling them under established corporate labels. News of his achievements was suppressed. Investors and banks ignored his requests for capital. Each invention, no matter how revolutionary, required painstaking effort to defend. To the world, he was a faceless technician. Behind the scenes, he was the author of progress itself. Yet in this struggle, Woods found clarity. The theft, the indifference, the systemic obstacles, they revealed the true nature of America's economic and social order. Innovation was celebrated only when it fit the acceptable narrative. Recognition was granted only when the inventor fit the acceptable face. For black inventors like Woods, the system was not neutral. It was a predator, waiting to extract brilliance without acknowledgement. Every patent stolen, every idea repackaged, every denied opportunity reinforced a deliberate pattern. America would use his mind, but erase his identity. Woods began mentoring younger inventors, teaching them not only the mechanics of telegraphs and engines, but the rules of survival within a system designed to deny them. He explained that invention alone was not enough. Knowledge had to be guarded, patents meticulously documented, and victories claimed publicly, repeatedly, relentlessly. The lesson was harsh. The genius of a black man was valuable, but the system would fight to claim it. To survive, one had to anticipate not only the technical challenges, but the societal ones as well. By the end of this period, Woods had established a reputation in industrial circles. Quiet, grudging, and often uncredited. Companies implemented his devices. Trains became safer, communication faster, but his name remained largely invisible. He had won in the courts, but society's narrative remained undefeated. America had accepted his inventions, but it refused to accept him. And yet, Woods pressed on, building, improving, and insisting on his right to exist within the story of progress. Every mechanism he perfected, every wire and circuit became a testament not only to invention, but to resistance, a spark of defiance in a world that would have preferred he remain unseen. By the 1890s, Granville T. Woods had become a man defined not by comfort or acclaim, but by the unrelenting drive to create in a world that refused to honor him. His workshop had grown into a small laboratory, walls lined with blueprints, shelves stacked with prototypes, and the faint smell of burning wires lingering in the air. Each spark that flew from his circuits was a declaration. He would not disappear quietly. Yet every success was met with quiet sabotage. White-owned corporations found ways to reproduce his designs, claiming them as their own. Investors continued to look past him, citing risk and experience, though the real reason was always the same: the color of his skin. Woods founded the Woods Electric Company, a modest enterprise meant to formalize his inventions under his own name. It was a bold move, a statement that he would not surrender authorship of his life's work. But the system had already set its traps. Banks refused loans, suppliers hesitated. Legal threats came from every corner, some implicit, some brazen. Patents he held were constantly challenged, litigated, and sometimes quietly purchased by others. Each day became a tightrope walk between innovation and survival, between creation and the constant threat of theft. It was a world where brilliance alone could not guarantee recognition, where even victory required near constant vigilance. Despite the obstacles, Woods continued to innovate. He improved the steam boiler for engines, developed more advanced railway signaling, and refined telegraphy systems that allowed multiple messages over a single wire. Trains moved more safely, industries operated more efficiently, and yet the men and women benefiting from his inventions rarely knew his name. His work became part of the invisible machinery of progress, absorbed by a society that would celebrate the results while systematically erasing the creator. Each success carried with it a bitter reminder: the system could not tolerate that a black man might build the future without permission. Woods's fight was not only professional, but deeply personal. He had invested decades of his life into technologies that saved lives. Yet he had to constantly assert his identity and ownership. Each court case, each negotiation, each patent filing became an act of defiance. And while victories were occasionally won in the courtroom, the public acknowledgement he deserved rarely followed. Newspapers ignored him, journals omitted him, and investors insisted on rewriting history in real time. Every invention stolen or miscredited was a lesson in the deliberate mechanisms of erasure, a reminder that talent and hard work alone were insufficient to secure a legacy. Yet, even as society attempted to suppress him, Woods refused to retreat. He mentored young inventors, sharing his techniques, his strategies, and, most importantly, his philosophy. That creation was a form of resistance. He taught that brilliance must be guarded and asserted continuously, especially when the world is predisposed to deny it. Every apprentice who left his workshop carried not only the technical knowledge, but a map for navigating systemic bias. Through teaching, Woods extended his influence beyond the laboratory, ensuring that even if his name was suppressed, his methods and spirit would persist. By the close of this chapter in his life, Woods had established a paradoxical legacy. He had changed the infrastructure of American railroads, telegraphy, and communication forever. Millions benefited from his work. Yet, he remained largely invisible in the narrative of progress. His victories were real but incomplete. His influence undeniable but largely uncredited. The system had tried to erase him, and in many ways it succeeded. But every spark, every signal, every mechanism he perfected was a testament to his resilience, a quiet rebellion against a society structured to ignore him. Granville T. Woods lived as a man caught between eras, one that relied on his intellect to move forward and one that refused to see him as its rightful architect. The world had taken the fruits of his labor while denying him recognition, a deliberate theft sanctioned by law, culture, and corporate greed. And yet, in every train whistle, every telegraph tick, and every device built on his principles, his presence persisted. He had wired the future, and no amount of systemic suppression could entirely silence the genius of Granville T. Woods. Granville T. Woods left a world forever changed by his inventions, yet he himself remained largely invisible within that world. Trains moved safer, telegraphs carried messages faster, and industries ran more efficiently, all powered by devices he had designed, perfected, and patented. Yet when the history books were written, when journalists celebrated progress, Woods's name was rarely mentioned. It was as if the system had decided that a black man could contribute to society's machinery but could not occupy its narrative. This was no accident. It was deliberate. Every overlooked credit, every misattributed patent, every historical omission was part of a broader pattern, a society engineered to benefit from black ingenuity while denying it visibility. Even as the world ignored him, Woods understood the paradox of his legacy. The inventions themselves could not be erased. Every telegraph signal that zipped across a wire, every railway brake that prevented a collision, every mechanical improvement that made life safer and faster carried his fingerprint. Though the public rarely saw it, the impact was undeniable. His genius existed in the fabric of American progress, quietly asserting itself every day, even as institutions actively tried to write him out of the story. He had wired the future, even if the world refused to call him its architect. In his later years, Woods continued to mentor and inspire, emphasizing the lessons he had learned the hard way. He told younger inventors that the fight for recognition was inseparable from the fight to create. A patent, a court victory, a technical breakthrough, they were all forms of resistance, acts that challenged the system built to erase Black achievement. Through his students, his methods, and the inventions themselves, Woods ensured that his knowledge would persist, even if his name remained absent from textbooks and plaques. Every young engineer who succeeded, every innovation built on his foundations, became an indirect reclamation of the credit the world had tried to deny him. The tragedy of Woods's life was in its visibility and invisibility at the same time. Corporations and institutions depended on his brilliance. Society thrived because of it. Yet, recognition was withheld systematically. His story was one of brilliance weaponized against prejudice, of intellect constrained by systemic oppression, and of resilience forced into anonymity. It exposed the dark architecture of a society that could simultaneously consume and erase a Black man's contribution. Every innovation stolen, every patent contested, every opportunity denied was proof of a deliberate, structural targeting. And yet, in the quiet moments, there is redemption. Woods's inventions live on. Every train safely running along its tracks, every telegraph signal flashing across miles of wire, every industrial system subtly enhanced by his designs is a testament that genius cannot be fully suppressed. The system may have stolen his public recognition, may have profited from his labor without giving him his due, but it could not steal the reality of his impact. The world functions in part because of a man whose name few remember, whose face rarely appears in history books, yet whose work quietly shapes modern life. Granville T. Woods's life is a lesson in resilience, ingenuity, and the cruel mechanisms of erasure. It is a warning that systemic injustice can operate quietly, without spectacle, by simply denying recognition while exploiting talent. Yet it is also proof that brilliance persists even under the harshest constraints. Every innovation, every device, every spark of progress built on his work stands as an unspoken monument to a man deliberately targeted by society, yet undefeated in influence. Though history tried to silence him, Woods's genius continues to speak through the trains, the telegraphs, and the infrastructure of modern America. In the end, Granville T. Woods teaches us that legacy is not always measured by fame or fortune. Sometimes it is measured by endurance. The systems that sought to erase him failed in one crucial respect. His work survived, and through it, he remains alive in the pulse of progress. History may have neglected his name, but the impact of his inventions resonates across time. And for those who look closely, the wires, the signals, and the machines carry the unmistakable imprint of a Black inventor who refused to be invisible.